If you're interested to balance your nutrition and diet, then in today's class, we are going to cover one of the most important Ayurvedic principles for your diet. Hi, this is Zia, and this is
Kamana, and welcome to Holistic Nomads TV,
where ancient wisdom and modern science can help you to have more clarity and energy in your life. So there are many foundational principles in Ayurveda. We already covered many of them, which is the dosha, the 5 elements, and then one of the things that we haven't covered is the 6 medicinal tastes of Ayurveda. So why is this even important, or the foundation to step more further to learn Ayurveda?
Ayurveda's got lots of these holistic lenses where we can use them on lots of different subjects of life, and this is considered the most important of these lenses when it comes to substance medicine and nutrition, is these 6 medicinal tastes. So every substance has a ratio of these 6 medicinal tastes in it, and it's how we understand sort of a generalized approach to nutrition. There's other more specific lenses that we use later on, but we first always start with the general approach. Ayurveda goes from general to specific.
Yeah, so this one will be more beneficial, especially when it comes to diet, nutrition, and herbal medicine.
Yeah.
Yes. So there are 6, which is quite different to the common one. When I heard 6, it's like there's only 5.
Yeah.
So there are 6. So what are they?
Sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. These are the 6 medicinal tastes.
So there will be this one different one that is astringent.
Astringent, which technically is not considered as a taste. We don't have taste buds for astringent, but we do experience the taste of astringent, not as a flavor, but as an experience in our mouth, this drying, sucking, drawing effect.
Cool. So we will talk more later after we go through this one by one of these 6 medicinal tastes and see the correlation that is not just related with food and nutrition in terms of like what we eat like through mouth, but also everything that we consume in life, isn't it?
Yeah. Like most of Ayurveda, we understand that it extends beyond food and substance, and that the lenses can be adapted to many subjects of life. And the special focus of this lens is still nutrition and substance.
So let's talk about these 6 medicinal tastes, and the first one is sweet.
Yeah, so the sweet flavor.
Sweet.
Sweet, yeah. So the sweet flavor, it's foods that it's associated with, is most of the food that we eat. It's like 60 to 80% of what we consume is dominant in the sweet flavor. And here we're not just talking about simple sugars, but we're also talking about complex carbohydrates, rice, wheat. We're also talking about proteins. We're also talking about fats. We're talking about most of the heavy things that nourish the body and build it up. So
what would be the example of foods that comes under sweet? Like exactly.
Your carbohydrates, grains, fats, proteins.
Definitely sugar.
Sugars, yeah. Most of the things that we eat, root vegetables, grains, fats and oils, meats, a large amount of the food that we eat is dominant in the sweet flavor. In fact, in one Ayurvedic doctor's perspective, the other medicinal tastes are present so that we are able to digest more sweet, that we're able to build up the tissues with this sweet flavor. If we only eat the sweet flavor, it becomes too heavy and bogs the body down, and we can't properly digest anymore. So the other medicinal tastes are there to balance and nourish us and enable us to digest the sweet.
So next, let's talk about the properties of sweet, because as you always talk about, whether in the previous class or your workshops, there's the importance of understanding the properties of everything. And what is that?
It's really ideal to understand the qualities, because the qualities are one of those holistic lenses that connects us to all of life. So the qualities for sweet are it's heavy. It's its main dominant quality. Heavy means it's going to take a longer time to digest. So when we eat it, we're going to feel more satisfied. It grounds the mind down. So if we're like up there and scattered, we eat something that's more sweet and it's like, oh, nourishing and calms us down. It's also unctuous and lubricating to the body. which means it's going to lubricate the tissues, it helps to lubricate the joints, it helps to build up the mass of the body, and it tends to be cooling.
Yeah, so let's correlate the 6 medicinal taste principle with another foundational principle, and that is the 5 elements. What will be the correlation between the two?
Yeah, so each of the 6 medicinal tastes has 2 elements that it's associated with, it's dominant with. And for the sweet taste, it's the earth and the water element that's dominant in this. And we can really see this in relation to its qualities. This heavy earth and water are 2 of the heaviest elements that there is. It's unctuous and lubricating. The water element's unctuous and lubricating. And it's slightly cooling. Water is a cooling element and earth is a fairly neutral sort of element.
So if I can, translate that for beginners, I think that's what we are good at. You talk about the scientific things, theory, and I'm kind of making it more applicable.
Yeah.
So is that, what is that? Well, many people say you are what you eat, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, it's not like if you eat expensive food, you'll become expensive. No, if you eat healthy food, you'll become healthy. In this case, if we correlate that saying to this principle of 6 medicinal tastes, is that, for example, sweet, the element of that is earth and water, and they're the 2 heaviest element compared to the others. So if you eat more sweet things, you will have more of this earthy water element in your body. So you have, bigger build.
More proteins, fats, carbohydrates. It's going to build the body up more and more. It goes to that principle of Ayurveda, like increases like.
Yes. So next one, at the beginning we talk about there is emotion that relates to it. So what will be the emotion that relates to sweet taste?
It's associated with the emotion of love, and in excess it builds attachment. So where if we think of this in like a context of losing a lover, one of the things that we want to do is eat like something sweet, a dessert, something that's nourishing and grounding. People want to go, oh, my life is still sweet. Yeah. When people say, oh, my life is sweet, they're often talking about the emotion of love and feeling good and happiness. So sweet relates to that emotion.
Yeah, it's very important, isn't it, to understand taste and the correlation with that, with our emotion, with our experience in life. Because let's talk about cravings, for example. So we will have a tendency, everyone is different, depends on their dosha. So everyone go through a certain experience, life experience and whatnot. And then we can slowly see, at least I can be more aware. So when I have a craving towards something, certain taste in food, I will realize, starting to notice, where does this come from? So instead of like just jumping to have that, then I will start, asking myself, is this the healthy outlet to fulfill this craving? So for example, when Kimana and I separated, for example, when you're away for teaching, and then I will have this craving for sweetness. Of course, food is the easiest one to fulfill that craving or sweetness because I can just buy it. But is that the healthiest way? Instead of like, oh, maybe I just need to, do abhyanga, because that's also a sweet experience compared to, eating very sugary gelato, for example, that yes, fulfilling my craving for sweetness, but probably not the healthiest and just temporarily.
Yeah, that's right. Look for the wholesome sweet rather than the empty sweet, they would say. So like sugars and empty sweet, grounding fats and carbohydrates, wholesome carbohydrates, oatmeal, grains, these are more wholesome sweet.
Yeah, I think this is one of my most used part of the 6 medicinal tastes of Ayurveda is that the correlation between the taste and the emotion, because it's very practical to see when and how our emotion fluctuate and its wants and needs and the cravings. Mm-hmm. Anyway, is there any like organs within our body that correlates more with this sweetness, or whether it's, I don't know, that we need to pay attention more of? Does that make sense?
The spleen pancreas is the organ that's most associated with the sweet, and small amounts of the sweet taste tends to balance the spleen pancreas. So having a little bit of sweet in the morning, let's say a cooked oatmeal or something like that, tends to nourish the spleen pancreas system, yet excess sweet damages the spleen pancreas. We think of diabetes, excess sugars damage that system. Also excess proteins tend to block and agglutinate, create glycation end products that block the production of insulin and the receptors of insulin inside the body. So the sweet taste damages that spleen pancreas in excess.
Yeah. So which dosha would benefit the most and not benefit the most to this taste?
Definitely it's Pitta that benefits the most from the sweet taste. They have the strongest digestive fire, so they have the greatest need for the heaviest, hardest to digest foods. So they'll need more of the sweet taste in their diet, more of the carbohydrate dominant foods, more of the protein dominant foods in their diet. Out of the sweet taste, it's the fats sometimes that they don't digest so well. Yet if you favor really easy to digest fats like olive oil and ghee, still where Pitta really needs those heavy, sweet, nourishing type foods the most. Then we would have Vata that needs it the next most, this oily, lubricating, this grounding feeling. Yet they need to be aware because their digestive system is often not as strong and intense, so therefore smaller amounts of it more regularly over the day is generally suitable for them. And Kapha is the dosha that needs the least. They can block in their system the coolness and the hard to digest properties. They'll still need sweet. Everyone needs that sweet flavor to build the tissues, but a small amount of sweet will go a long way and be able to build the body easier with Kapha.
And Kapha already sweet. They don't need more sweet.
That's right. They've got enough sweetness to share it.
Yes, compared to like Vata that, scatter around, the more sweetness. So next time, what would be the contraindication when you need to pay attention consuming sweetness?
So for every person, regardless of your dosha, if there is ama, half-digested byproducts, the body's been accumulating too much and the digestion hasn't been working well, then we may need to stop sweet for a period of time. It's why certain types of fasting, modified fasting, can be beneficial for all doshas, regardless, Vata, Pitta or Kapha. And this time allows the body to get rid of the ama, the half-digested byproducts. And we generally decrease the sweet flavor in our diet during those detoxification periods. If you've got a big tongue coating, like thick white coating or yellow or brown, then that shows ama inside the body, half digested byproducts. And there we need to reduce the sweet flavor. Also excess fat in the body, again, regardless of your dominant dosha. If Vata's got a big belly going, then that's excess fat that's building up around the organs. If it's Pitta or Kapha and we see fat in the system, then we may need to reduce the sweet flavor for a period of time and balance out that in the system. And the last one is in relation to Agni. If the digestive fire is not working so well, and then we may need to look at modifying which sweet flavors we can have in the diet that are digesting well, because generally the imbalanced Agni will have the most challenges with digesting sweet flavors.
Okay, before we continue to the next taste, because earlier you mentioned about the tongue coating, we already talked about tongue coating, what's the meaning, how to treat it in our previous class. I will put the link below. So next taste, salty.
Yeah, the next taste is salty. So the salty flavor for foods, it's obvious in salt. Yeah. Now, for the most part, I'd try to avoid table salt, just pure sodium chloride that you'll find in most commercial supermarkets. And I'd be favoring more sea salt or complex rock salts that come from the ground. These have a much wider range of minerals inside them. And also the salty flavor is found in many sea vegetables, particularly seaweeds. It's also found in meats, particularly fish, yet many types of flesh type based foods will also have more of the salty flavor.
Yeah. What would be the properties that related with the salty taste?
The salty flavor tends to lubricate the body. So when we have a little bit of salt in something, it encourages the body to be able to hold on to more fluid. So this building up of fluid through that. It also tends to be heavy. It nourishes the body. It grounds the body down. It has this descending action inside the body, and it's warming. It increases the body's digestion ability, it increases production of hydrochloric acid and allows the body to hold on to more stable temperature.
So next one, we are going to talk about the elements that relate to salty taste. What would that be?
The elements that are most associated with the salty flavor are the water element and the fire element. The water element has this lubricating property to it, and the fire element has this heating, increasing digestion property. In one classical Ayurveda book called the Sushrut Samhita, they also consider the earth element associated with the salty taste. I don't think one is right or wrong here. I think they both have a light to shed on the situation, as salty has a lot of minerals inside it and it helps to ground the body down. We also have a bit of the earth element there too.
Yeah, I mean, I can notice if I eat too much salty things, my belly will get a little flabby.
Flabby, that's right. It's one of its contraindications is laxity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next one will be the emotion that relates to salty taste.
The emotion associated with salt is greed. It's like this, I want more, because in food it helps us digest, it helps us to absorb more of the nutrients from the food, yet as it becomes excessive, it's like, oh, we just want more. You imagine those salty chips that you eat a little bit of and then you're just like, oh, I can't stop. I'm just going to eat more and more. And MSG is a flavor enhancer that's a type of salt. It's very addictive. It's associated with greed. And this greed doesn't just happen in relation to the food and what you're eating with MSG. It starts to spread into other areas of life. So we've just got to be aware. If that emotion is excessive, then we need to be, oh, what sort of salt am I eating? Am I eating the highest qualities and able to get the most bang for my buck out of the smallest amount?
I love salty.
She does. She loves salty, which is good because you're Vata dominant and it's mainly beneficial for you. Maybe not so much MSG.
Oh, yeah, already kind of reduced that.
Yeah, already kind of. I love the truth.
Well,
on this.
sometimes
Yeah.
you can't avoid it. If you're like in Indonesia, it's like
Yeah.
everything is like MSG.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah.
So next one will be the organs that affected the most when it comes to salty.
The kidney organ is the most affected with salty. Little bits of salt, fabulous for the kidneys to be able to keep fluids inside the body, prevent dryness that's going on. Excess salt tends to damage the kidneys.
Okay, so which dosha will benefit the most and not benefit from salty taste?
It's Vata dosha that benefits the most. Here we've got this water and fire elements, or earth and fire elements. These are all the elements that tend to balance Vata. It's lubricating, it's warm, it has a heavy quality, it helps hold fluids inside the body. So the old way of thinking of salt is bad is definitely not true. If you're eating a lot of processed foods, you probably have too much sodium chloride, processed table salt present, but otherwise it's good to add a little bit of quality sea salt or rock salt to most of the meals that you're having to increase absorption, great for Vata, and to nourish the body and keep the food and the fluids in the body. The next one is Pitta. It's moderate for Pitta, meaning small amounts are okay, yet it can aggravate Pitta with its heating quality. Here it's especially sea salt. Sea salt has more heating quality compared to like a pink Himalayan salt or a black Sandhava salt. These rock salts that come from the earth are not quite as heating and are more suitable for Pitta. And for Kapha, it's a reduce because it tends to increase fluids and flabbiness inside the body, so we don't need to have as much salt for Kapha.
Funny that because it's usually the Kapha dominant people that love to do this potato couch.
Couch potato.
Yeah, couch potato.
Potato couch, yeah. Yeah.
And
Potatoes
also,
on the couch.
Yeah. And also, you often mention, recommend me, to even put salt on the water, especially when we don't have this alkaline water filter, because it's good to kind of like have that mineral as well.
Yeah, especially when I'm here in the tropics, I tend to get dehydrated much easier. My body sweats fairly easily here. I'm adding just a tiny, a few little grains of sea salt to most of the glasses of water that I'm drinking.
Okay, next one, what will be the contraindication?
The contraindication for saltiness is laxity, where you see like flabbiness that's coming inside the body, also excess fluids that are building up, a high blood pressure that's associated with excess fluids at the same time. So it's more of a consistently high blood pressure, not a nervous system high blood pressure that's going on. That would be more of a Vata type thing. But Pitta and Kapha, high blood pressure, excess fluids building inside the body. Salt also tends to heat the skin, so if we've got a lot of skin irritations, then we may need to reduce the salt flavour for a period of time. Heat in the blood type conditions, red and bloodshot eyes, all of these sorts of things may be associated with excess salt.
So next taste, the sour taste. What will be the food that correlates with it?
The foods that correlate the most with the sour taste are fruits, particularly acidic dominant fruits, so like our citrus family, mangoes, amalaki, this is a special fruit from India that's used as medicine, and also fermented foods. As we ferment, we increase the sour flavour, so alcohol also has quite a bit of the sour flavour present.
Okay, so next one, properties of sour taste.
The sour taste tends to lubricate the system, yet the higher the concentration of alcohol, it can also be drying, but it tends to lubricate. It's light, it's easy to digest, and it's warming, so it's great to increase the digestive fire of the body.
What will be the element associated with it?
The elements associated with the sour taste are the fire and earth element. That's the most classical association. Fire, it's warming, and the earth element, it tends to ground the body. Yet also in the Sushruta Samhita, he has classified here fire and water because it tends to lubricate the body as well.
Yeah, I used to love that when I was little, but now I don't really like it.
What did you used to love?
Very soury food.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Probably because it increased fire and water and the earth. Because when I was little, I'm a very super skinny person.
Yeah.
And probably my, cravings like, I need more, kind of mass. Probably.
Builds you up. Yeah, maybe.
So next one, what will be the emotion that relates with sour taste?
Envy. So it's this like envious of, I want to be like that. I want more of that.
And then if we eat too much, which organs that will,
It's the liver. Small amounts of the sour taste can actually be great for the liver. Even with alcohol here, tiny amounts of alcohol, we're talking like a teaspoon or something, a tablespoon, stimulate liver function and open up the channels throughout the liver. Excess of the sour flavour tends to aggravate the liver and create more of this sort of state.
Yeah, in Ayurveda we have this medicinal wine, and then when people are like, wine, and then, it's only like 1 tablespoon.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so next, which dosha will benefit the most and not benefit from this?
Vata highly benefits from the sour taste, so they can have more of the citrus type foods, mangoes, and more of alcohol, especially in the winter time. Now, we're not talking about drinking alcohol to get drunk, we're talking about small medicinal amounts, or cooking with wine, using wine in what you cook, and then you'll have the sour flavour in there, but you've cooked off the alcohol content, which was the drying part of that fermentation process. So they tend to benefit from ferments the most with Vata. Then we'd have Pitta. It tends to get aggravated with the sour flavour. And Kapha, also it's sort of this, it can get aggravated, probably needs to reduce most of the time. Little bits of alcohol are fine for it occasionally. Again, when talking about drinking alcohol here, we're talking about small amounts medicinal here. It's Pitta that aggravates from it.
So next one, contraindication for sour taste.
The contraindications for the sour taste are any itching conditions that are happening on the skin. Sour tends to increase itching conditions. It also heats the blood, so we've got heat in the blood, maybe red skin condition that's going on, red heat in the eyes that are happening. And it tends to build most of the tissues of the body, but it depletes the reproductive tissues. It's depletion to reproductive essence. So if we've got like low fertility, or we're trying to have a child or something, it's not the dominant flavor that we would favor. And in this point, I'd like to introduce, there's a principle where we have 3 building tastes and we have 3 detoxifying, depleting tastes. And we've just gone through the 3 building tastes. Sweet, sour, and salty are the ones that tend to build the body up. They build more of the tissues, except sour reduces the reproductive tissues. So contraindicated in reproductive deficiency.
Yeah, I also want to add on that the sweet, salty and sour, we already mentioned that it's actually the taste that is good for Vata, beneficial for Vata because of its increasing and building. And the next one that we're going to cover, less favorable for Vata because it's
more reducing. And detoxifying.
What comes to my mind is like non-forming, because it makes the form
non-forming tastes.
Is that even work?
It works, yeah.
Next taste, pungent, or we Indonesian also call it spicy. Would you correlate with that, pungent and spicy?
Yeah, spicy can work. The challenge is that most of our Western minds correlate spicy with just spices, and they don't necessarily correlate it with the pungent that may be present in parsley or something like that. So pungent is the flavors that are warming, and they tend to increase digestive fire. So we've got like a spicy heating herbs, ginger, and also
cayenne
pepper, chili, garlic, onion.
Yeah.
Thanks there.
You are very welcome. It's like my middle name, Zia Chili Nichols.
She's like, I'm not forgetting about chili. Yeah.
Next one, what will the properties be for this pungent taste?
The properties for the pungent taste is one of the more warming tastes, so it tends to increase digestive fire, it tends to push the heat out to the surface of the body, it tends to stimulate circulation through these warming properties. It's light, meaning it tends to reduce the tissues, it tends to make the body lighter overall and lighten the mind, and it tends to dry the body. So if there's excess moisture, dampness or blockage, then this pungent flavor will tend to dry things.
Next one, the elements that relates to this.
The elements that are associated are the fire elements, naturally warming, dispersing, and this heating quality, and the air element. This is like this moving, circulating, stimulating, and drying quality comes from the wind.
Yeah. The emotion.
The emotion that's associated with it is hatred. It's this like, in its positive, it's focus, drive. When it's negative, it's hatred. It's this like, I want to change this. I'm intolerant to what's going on.
Yeah, anger,
irritability, impatience, hatred.
Yeah. Cool. So if you want to reduce that, then you might also reduce the pungent taste.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next one, which dosha will benefit the most from this, and the opposite as well?
So the doshas, for Vata, it's generally considered that it aggravates Vata, yet Vata still needs it to have a little bit of this pungent quality present. Everyone needs to have a little bit of all 6 medicinal tastes, but it's about balancing it with other tastes for Vata. They still should have the pungent quality, but not pungent flavors that are so drying and so intense. As an example, chili, it's quite warming, but it's dry and light and hot, and it tends to dry and disperse the body's resources easily. So they should favor the pungents that have more of a lubricating property to them, like ginger or something like that. For Pitta, this is the taste that tends to aggravate Pitta. They need to reduce the pungent flavor the most. They've already got enough heat and this hot, dry, light qualities that are there. And for Kapha, it's one of the most balancing tastes for Kapha. They need to have more of these pungent properties, get the circulation stimulated more, get the digestive fire happening in a strong way.
What would be the contraindication over consuming this pungent taste?
So it's contraindicated for reproductive deficiency, the areas of the body where we could really reduce those tissues with the pungent quality. So if there's dryness, vaginal dryness, or low sperm count, or just a really low sex drive, the pungent flavor needs to be reduced. Also acidity, acid reflux, heartburn, ginger, chili, these things are too much for that upward rising. So many Indonesians suffer from these conditions. Probably need to reduce chili and those pungent things to just a couple of times a week and see how that affects that upward rising tendencies. And heat, inflammations throughout the blood, aggravated blood, particularly the ligaments and the tendons of the body. If many of the ligaments and the tendons feel a little bit inflamed or they get easily inflamed after movement, then maybe reduce the pungent taste there.
Yeah, I think we also need to add that when we talk about the dosha, which dosha will get benefit and not benefit, is also relating not just to individual but also the environment. So like for example in Indonesia, it's a tropical countries and it's already hot. Of course, like increases like, so when it's hot, you want more hot, you know? But that doesn't mean that's what we should do or is healthy or is ideal to do. So especially if you're dominant Pitta and then you live in a hot place, then you want to reduce that even more. But even if you're not dominant Pitta and then you live in a Pitta dominant place, then you want to reduce pungent
And it's
taste.
the middle of the day, the Pitta time. It's definitely not the time for a dominant pungent meal.
Yeah. Next one, bitter taste.
The bitter taste is not so often found in our general diet. In fact, chefs and restaurants have pretty much eradicated the bitter taste because most people don't really like the flavor of it. It's commonly found in herbal medicine and some of our leafy greens. Here in Indonesia, the herbal medicine sambiloto, for Westerners andrographis, is very bitter. Neem, golden seal in America, the dandelion, luvensan in Europe. These things are very dominant in the bitter taste.
Yeah, so next one, what will be the properties that related with it?
The properties associated with the bitter taste are dry, light and cold. This dry, light and cold really reduces the tissues. It's one of the most detoxifying tastes. So if we have excess toxins in the body, every person needs a little bit of this bitter flavor. It reduces the tissues, it draws down and out, it opens up the liver and the gallbladder through these dry, light and cooling properties.
Which is why the dosha that relates with it is air and ether.
The element that's associated with the air and ether. That's right. It's one of the most reducing tastes there is. These are the lightest and driest elements, air and ether, air and space.
Which is why the dosha.
That's right, yeah. Which is why the dosha that's related with it is Vata, aggravates Vata.
Yeah. And yet it's beneficial for both Pitta and Kapha, yeah?
Beneficial for both Pitta and Kapha, particularly Pitta, because of its cooling property. It's really beneficial for Pitta. If someone has a Pitta aggravation and they're not consuming Pitta daily in their daily in their diet, then they really need to look at their natural environment and go, what sort of bitter flavors would have my culture naturally eaten 50 to 100 years ago, before the Western diet dominated the world? What were the bitter flavors that my culture would have eaten?
Yeah, in Indonesia we have this bitter melon, for example, and then all the herbs that you already mentioned. And actually, my ethnic group, Sundanese, we eat fresh, bitter leafy greens on the sides, which we don't do that anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, it's just like on the sides, not much, but like, just a few leaves.
Just a little bit, yes. Yeah, that's all you need. The bitter flavor, you don't need a lot of, yeah. All doshas, it's a very small amount in terms of the overall percentage of our diet, but just a little bit of it makes us digest the sweet that much better.
Yeah. Next one, the one that we skip.
We skip the emotion, yeah.
What is the emotion that relates with it?
The emotion that relates with it is grief, yeah. It's this like, letting go, sadness type thing that goes on in the body. So if we have too much of the bitter, just as people will say, oh, that's bitter, life is experience, we don't want so much bitter, yet it's a bittersweet symphony. A little bit of grief is okay, and then we can really let go, yeah? And then we move on to the sweet again.
And the organs that might get disturbed by having excess of bitter?
The organ associated with it is the heart. Yeah, if we eat a lot of bitter, it tends to stimulate the nervous system. It tends to be like, yeah, so the heart and its association with grief is also there too.
Yet the organ that is really will get benefit the most is the liver, isn't it? That's what they're saying, bitter is better for the liver.
Bitter is better for Pitta.
Yeah.
Bitter for Pitta, bitter for the liver. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So next one, contraindication.
The most important contraindication for bitter is deficiencies. All deficiencies, whether it's deficiencies of fluid, deficiencies of muscle, deficiencies of tissue, anywhere in the body, bitter is associated with pulling excess out of the system. So in that case, Vata. If there's excess Vata aggravations, we really need to be aware of very small amounts of bitter in the diet. Also, if it's a very cold environment or the body's got a lot of cold going on, most bitter flavors are cooling in their nature. And pregnancy, because pregnancy is a period where we're trying to build up, we're trying to maximize nutrition for the baby, we also don't want to have so much bitter there too.
Next one, the last taste, that is astringent. What is astringent and what food that correlates with it?
Again, astringent, like bitter, is not so common in our general diet type food. Inside the food, it's associated with tannins. And tannins are present in many different foods. There's small amounts of them that are present in wine. There's a lot present in certain herbs like witch hazel or alum, and these herbs have an astringent property where you'll notice in the mouth it'll like suck and dry. Unripe fruits are probably the closest thing that the common person has experienced in relation to that. So think of like an unripe banana where you try to eat it and it's just like sucks all the moisture out of your mouth. That's an astringent property.
Yeah. Questions before we continue with the next one, because we have this, what is that? We talk about sweet first, and then salty, and then sour, and then pungent, and bitter, and astringent. Is that also a spectrum of like from the heaviest to the lightest? Would you say that astringent is light, create less form compared to bitter?
That's right, it is. So we're looking at the heaviest to their lightest.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, the astringent taste. So what will be the properties, the qualities that relates with it?
The properties for the astringent taste is dry, light, and cool. So it tends to reduce tissues, yet it can tighten them and draw them together. So particularly tissues that are inflamed and drawn out, its dry, light, and cooling properties tend to contract and draw things together.
Yeah, which is when it comes to the elements, it's one thing that I often forget, because it's like the earth and air is like, why is it so opposite?
Yeah, through these opposite qualities of air drying and pulling in, and earth, it tends to build the linings of tissues through this dry and air and earth opposites.
Yeah, so which means the dosha that will get benefit the most from it is
Pitta, because Pitta tends to, through its heating properties, tends to expand and inflame and draw tissues outwards and makes them lax, and fluids tend to push out, sweat and excess urination, excess diarrhea type things, where this astringent property draws in and contracts and holds tissues together like that. Vata tends to get aggravated by astringent, yet small amounts of astringent are still necessary there, and Kapha can also be aggravated by astringent.
And the emotion, what emotion relates with it?
The emotion associated with astringent is fear, and the organ that it affects, it tends to affect the colon, also another main site affected by fear.
Yeah, is there any positive emotion that somehow relates with it?
I'd say a small amount of it might be associated with the opposite of fear, this feeling of grounded and security, yet large amounts are going to be it dries and astringes the body.
Because I want to correlate that with, let's say, Pitta, because characteristically, that will be the one that is like going out there and spreading and their fame or whatever, expanding business, and then having that astringent ness in their life, whether it's through food, emotion, whatever that is, it's kind of like contract them of like, okay, bring it back,
bring it back.
Yeah, instead of like, don't need to like go out there all the time. It's just, okay, bring it back, and feel more grounded in where they are and feel content with who they are.
Yeah, that could definitely be a relationship. For me, I often don't use the emotional relationship to the tastes as its dominant lens. I use it more related to body actions and things inside the functional aspects of the body. And for emotions, I use the more tamas, rajas, and sattva. It's another lens that's very specific for psychology.
Yeah. It really shows the difference between you and I. You like things that is, more scientific and this and that, and I'm interested because it relates with the emotion.
For me, I just see that was the original highlight purpose of this lens, was the body. And for the emotions, I use the highlight lens for the emotions.
Next one, what would be the contraindication?
The main contraindication is blockage, where there may be a blockage inside the tissues of the body. So here we could look at excess fats that are blocking throughout the system. So cholesterol, or blockage in the colon, some sort of channel obstruction, or the sweat is not really flowing well and there's a blockage in the sweat. Any of these sorts of conditions, it could aggravate. And excess Vata would also be another tendency there, because Vata sometimes has challenges with elimination, and astringency can hold the elimination from evacuating well.
So before we wrap up this class, because you mentioned about tamas, rajas, and sattva, can we correlate the 6 medicinal tastes to
Tamas, Rajas and Sattva,
yes.
yeah, we can. The only dominant sattvic taste, meaning produces harmony and calmness in the mind, is the sweet taste. It's the only taste. So
But not sweet from sugar at the same time.
not sweet from sugar, yet to some degree, a little bit of sugar in a nice balanced way within a meal is probably still sattvic. It's still harmonizing to the mind, it calms us, it grounds us. So we're not portraying sugar as the devil here. Sugar could be sattvic if it's the real small right amounts within the meal, not the amount where I can taste it and it's sweet and yummy. That's not what we're talking about. So the most sattvic food is a close to neutral sweet fruit or something like that. So we'd be looking at a mango, a mangosteen, a banana. Most of the fruits that have just a slight sweet flavor, they're very sattvic, they're harmonizing to the mind. And then we'd also be looking at cooked whole grains, root vegetables, sweet potatoes, those sorts of things would also be very sattvic foods.
Yeah, because this is something that I get asked a lot about. People's craving towards certain food, and then actually understanding Ayurveda, I can see that, like we said earlier, when people, let's say, just broke up from their partner and then they crave for sweet food. But actually what they really crave is connecting with others that brings that sweetness in their life compared to eating dessert or like sugary things. So we will going is that even the word? We're going to cover about these cravings, what's the meaning of it, and finding a treatment plan that is more wholesome towards this craving of certain foods. Anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, the salty, sour, and the pungent tastes are the ones that are more associated with the rajasic. Rajasic is like desire, I want more, I'm going out there. It's willfulness, anger, irritation.
Yeah. On the caption below, there is a link to download this A4 chart. Kimana call it the cheat sheet, the table sheet, whatever that is, on all of the information that we shared today and more, which is the action. Was it correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. There's also a section on actions in there that we didn't cover today. We sort of covered it in a roundabout way through the qualities and the properties.
Yeah. So there's a link below. Just download it. It's all free for you to get. Kimana will always recommend it to print it, put it on your fridge or something. On
your fridge is how I recommend. Use that 6 medicinal taste chart on the fridge or in your toilet or somewhere where you're going to read it regularly.
Yeah. Anything else you would like to add?
The last one is the tamasic flavors. The bitter and astringent are the ones that are more associated with tamasic, and we'd also include fermented foods there. That's emotions of fear, stagnation, worry, excess sleepiness, just not really getting into the day. And if we overdo the sweet flavor, that will also create tamas.
Again, the key is balance.
Balance, that's right. It's finding that we need all 6 medicinal tastes in our diet. So that's the big takeaway from this, is that do you have all 6 flavors in your diet? And then if you have a dominant dosha, then start looking at what's the most important taste I might need to increase and what's the most important taste I might need to decrease, and sort of work with that as your overall. If you haven't looked at the video on sattvic nutrition, that's really the first step to nutrition. Is my dominant nutrition wholesome, not processed, as fresh and local as possible? And then from there move on to more individualized things like the 6 medicinal tastes.
We put the link below on the 7 steps towards what we call that, having more clarity in the mind, which basically about sattvic nutrition.
Yeah.
Thank you for today. It's been really long.
It's a long one. It's an important one. Happy to share with you all. Look forward to sharing more in the future. If you're interested to help others heal holistically, or just wishing to have more control in your own self-care, then check out the programs I've created on Ayurvedic.com. We've brought together some of the world's best health experts, teaching people what I consider to be the 6 most important branches of holistic healing. I really hope to share this wisdom with you in the future, and I hope you too share it with the world.
Now, theory without practice is wasteful, because hearing leads to forgetting, teaching leads to remembering, and applying leads to mastering. That's why we will encourage you to leave a comment below and share one learning insight from this video. Also, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you will be the first to hear about our future educational videos. And for more resources on health and healing, check out our website holisticnomads.com. There you will find articles, quizzes on Ayurveda, lots of free downloads, and of course, our future events and courses. Thank you so much for watching. We hope it's been beneficial for you. Hope to see you next week. Bye.
It decreases the overall tissues and it's cold. Do I need to do that again?
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I got it. Yeah, no good. Yeah.